إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the LMA live stream. And what a couple of weeks it's been. To be quite honest with you, there's a saying somewhere, I need to find the attribution, where sometimes years are made in days, in the matter of days, and there are years that go by and nothing happens. And the last couple of weeks, oh boy, from everything from the Epstein files to, Isaac Herzog landing in Australia, to the Sydney protests, all this happening, and we are on the doorsteps of the most precious month of the year, Ramadan. And so it's crazy for the Muslim to be processing all this at the same time, subhanAllah. How does one understand the world and what's going on and act in it, and yet find themselves trying to come to this month, which is supposed to be full of serenity and taqwa? At least that's what we're told. How does one go into Ramadan knowing that genocide continues to affect our brothers and sisters in Gaza? How does one exist in a place and in a world where the political environment as Muslims here in Sydney, Australia, we find ourselves in an environment where Muslims have been ripped away from their salah while they were at a protest standing against the genocide in Gaza itself, and then find themselves going into this month where they're supposed to be seeking a form of tranquility. All of this and more we hope to explore, inshallah, on today's podcast with two of my favorite Jimmies in the world, Hajj Gamel Kheir and Sheikh Jamal El-Kiki. To be a little bit more respectful, Hajj Gamel Kheir.
Actually, I like Jimmy more.
Sheikh Jamal El-Kiki. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. No disrespect, Sheikh.
It's all good.
Hajj, with all due respect.
I love Jimmy. Don't worry, I love the Jimmy.
Allah ya'tikul afiyah. So, let me start with my own story, a little story. On Monday, unfortunately, I wasn't personally able to attend the protest, and instead I found myself on the plane. I was coming back from Adelaide. They had pushed my plane time back. SubhanAllah, they had pushed it back just enough so that, small blessings we should be thankful for. I went from being on a Jetstar plane from Adelaide to Sydney to a Qantas plane to Sydney. Slightly more comfortable chairs. But I found myself on this plane going through my phone because I'm not one of those people that puts my phone on airplane mode. And the last video I saw, subhanAllah, was a video, and we've all seen it, where there was a group of Musallin at the protest. As far as I understand, it was after the protest, in a place where, again, as I understand, it was completely legal and completely fine for them to be praying their Maghrib Salah. And as they're praying, I see a number of faces, some very close friends, brothers that I've done business with, and brothers that I've personally been active with. I find them in that line, and all of a sudden they're grabbed and dragged out of that line, pushed into a barricade of officers. I'll keep the commentary to myself. And all I found myself doing was shaking in just, you call it rage, call it. I was horrified. I was thinking, what is going on? I had a few moments to say or do something, so I messaged Hajj Gamel over here, just saying, "What are we gonna do?" And subhanAllah, the rest of the flight was. I was just this constant thing on my mind, an hour and a half of just trying to figure out, what did I just witness? So let me go straight over to Hajj Gamel here and ask, what was your initial reaction to that video, and how 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 did you see what had happened in the context that it had happened?
Well, I got sent it like all of us did on WhatsApp. So it just was doing the social media around immediately. And to be honest with you, when I watched it, I thought it was just going to show us that Sheikh Wissam was praying live at the mosque. I thought, how beautiful. You know, like the concept of just a peace protest and then praying. Little did I know what was going to happen later. And then that awe of watching the Sheikh praying live, which I thought was live, honestly. That's what I thought it was live. And so I was watching, I was going, mashallah, it's beautiful. Then I saw the police and I thought, and I went to disbelief. I actually truly went to disbelief. I didn't go into anger. I just went to disbelief, thinking that what I just saw could not be possibly true. It could not be true. And so the anger came later. And when I say later, I mean I just come back. We were in Adelaide, and I came back from Adelaide, and I was just sitting with my family, and then all of a sudden, you know, the disbelief, and then anger hit, and then all of a sudden I thought, what can I do? And then by that time, not only you, I think half of Sydney had started sending angry messages to myself, saying, "Well, what are you going to do about it? I wish I could do something." And this is the frustration that we all feel, as the Muslim community. We don't. We have very limited ability to actually speak out and let the world hear. Sometimes the way I can describe it is I really genuinely wanted to go top of the roof of my house and just scream my lungs out, because I think all of us felt that little 3-minute clip was our 3 years since Gaza encapsulated. And genuinely, I just wanted to scream. I didn't feel like the frustration I'm starting to feel is like we don't even feel like Australia is our safe haven anymore. And that's the frustration that everyone feels, that, you know, this is just, the world is turning into a very, very, very precarious place where genuinely the idea of raising a family safely and, you know, the old Australian dream has been obliterated. And I think that's what's shocking us, that we're living in this ugly world where all of a sudden now, what we used to take for granted, praying, is now, even that is a questionable act. And I think that's what hit me the most, that, you know, the idea of a policeman actually manhandling someone in the act of prayer. There's nothing more peaceful than a prayer to me. I mean, if you're not a Muslim, I could see anyone praying. It doesn't matter what religion they are, and it looks peaceful. It does. It has it does have this idea of peace.
Tranquil moment,
Yeah.
almost. Yeah.
And to see a police officer, the way he did it, especially with a brother Shabazz, I think it was first, where he literally threw him. And all I could I'm visualizing it as I'm talking to you, the shock on his face. Because you don't expect that in a prayer. You genuinely don't. You're in that sort of zone.
I mean, you don't expect it. You don't expect it in Sydney, Australia, right? And look, let's be very clear, right? It's unfortunate, but we have seen these sorts of scenes many times before in Masjid Al-Aqsa itself.
Yeah. But that's the thing, you know. I mean, and I'm not,
And of course,
I'm not excusing. It's the reality that now, what happened to our brothers and sisters in Palestine is coming home. It's happening everywhere, and you know, look, and we'll get onto it later. There's a lot of messages to me in what happened that 3 minutes. And it's not me; it's the messages to that Rabb al-Alamin subhanahu wa ta'ala is sending to us, that we need to change who we are and how we interact and how we talk and how we carry ourselves. But that's a deeper meaningful for some other time.
And Sheikh Jamal, so you tell me what was your reaction? How I know that you've been at many of these protests, and this, and I'm going to be quite direct here. We need more young men, more young Muslims, especially more young mashayikh participating in some of these activities. This is my personal view, and none of my views are reflective of the organizations in which we any organization at this point in time. However, so you've been to many of these, you've participated in the salah with them, you've participated in the chants and the rest of it. How did you feel? How did that make you feel at the time when you first saw that video?
So with this one, I mean, for me, just seeing it on WhatsApp, I believe that's where I saw it. Uh, to be honest, the response was one of numbness. It's just that we're seeing this. Like we've been exposed to so much shocking content over the course of the last 2.5 years that yes, this is now happening, or this is now in Sydney, but it's in a very similar vein. Where there's no red lines. This idea of no red lines, this idea of um, uh, essentially, anything goes. This is now a reality that is being experienced even here in Sydney. So it was numbness. I mean, and that was obviously part of it, but alongside that, for me, it wasn't the entire focus of the numbness. It's also the brutality with which even non-Muslim protesters were being handled. Just the bashing. Like for things to escalate to that level. I mean, okay, previously I've been to protests where some people were pepper sprayed. Even that was that's quite appalling. Especially when there wasn't really violence being used and so on by the protesters, but. Now we're talking about people with knees to their chests and just repeatedly punched and a woman with vertebra being broken, an elderly woman
I mean, subhanallah, that and of course this is more than just about apologies. This is about accountability at the end of the day, right? And many of these people need to, not just people, the institution needs to be held to account. But offering, Hajj, we've gone through this in the last 24 hours or so. The simple offering of an apology, of a recognition, the premier of this country, of this state, stood in parliament and said that he will not apologize for the actions of officers who were there to ensure the safety of civilians. I don't see how having a young boy, a young man, laid on his back, being laid into his face, multiple strikes to his face. You could very easily just arrest that young man. It's not very hard to have two cops and put a handcuffs or whatever it is that they use these days around his hands. One of the guys that were praying was saying that he was kneed in his back. This was to me. This was in a bit of a personal gathering. What does it say to to not just the Muslim community, but the pro-Palestinian community?
Let me expand that, and this is what I've been talking about for a while, and particularly to not even the Palestinian Action Group or the Palestinian protests, but to the general Australian person across the country.
Yeah.
If we do not stop what's happening in terms of the limitation of our civil liberties and what we've also always taken for granted, we are heading down the slippery slope of a police state. And all these rules that are putting in place to stop any form of protest or what they consider to be antisocial. And when I say they, it's the establishment. Now, whoever you're whether you believe in conspiracy theories or not, but the establishment.
Let me remind you, the Epstein files exist.
But what I'm saying, by establishment, people can read into that what they want. But even if you just read into it on the very basis of the police and the government, if we do not put a stop and reclaim, then it's not the Muslim community. We're just the guinea pigs today. It's the wider Australian community that's going to be ultimately the ones we're going to be saying, well, we warned you. Yeah, you were happy when it was happening to us. And a shout out to all the haters on our Facebook pages because they're filling up the pages. So a shout out to you. Thank you very much.
With all the laugh reacts as well.
Yeah. And I love all the bots and everyone else that feels you go away, but we're providing you a happy entertainment. So them, the ones who have been so vocal on Facebook, they will look back one day and say, oh, maybe they were right. Maybe those things that we did have as we took for granted, we've lost now. But more to the point of what you just said before, there's two things I wanted to mention, which I disagree with you in a bit, Bill.
That's fine.
In order to have an accountability, you must have an apology.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you don't have the apology, then you're not accountable for anything. You believe you're right. So this is why we've been saying the independent inquiry will happen later. Right now, we want an apology because there was a wrong done. Apologize, and then we can talk about accountability. And we don't want accountability. We don't want the police investigating themselves. That's like me investigating myself. I've never done anything wrong. I'm perfect. Yeah, but that's the attitude. What is acceptable for one side of the community should be acceptable for all the community. We don't live in a segregated community here or a segregated country. We have an independent judiciary for a reason. It's to hold government accountable when they stray, and they're not perfect either. So, with all due respect to Mr. Mins, he may think that he's right here, but I don't value his opinion much at the moment. And I want a judiciary independent of him and his commissioner to decide if their version of the facts are correct or not. I don't think that's asking for much. I think that's what Australia they say is built on. The independence of government and the judiciary. Now, if you want to live in the US and have a Minneapolis on your hands and where Mr. Trump decides to buy his judges in the Supreme Court, then say that. At least say that. Say that's what we want. Well, that's what Australia, that's what we like. And if that's fair enough, then you can choose to be here or not. But that's not what Australia wants to be. And if that's what it wants to be, that's a different story.
Yeah, of course. And so the question is then, I've got one other question. And I think this one goes more towards the purpose of why this podcast itself was established in many ways. And for the record, on this episode, I've deliberately not shared any questions with my guests today. So this one goes to the heart of what this podcast is about. How does the LMA decide on its media strategy and communication? If you don't mind giving us a little bit of the inside thinking. This not necessarily with regards to this incident, but with regards to how we generally sort of inquire about these things.
Okay, look, I know there's the very right-wing theory, and I'm talking about our Muslim community, and there's the left-wing theory, and somewhere between is the truth. There are those who consider that the LMA, everything it does is hypocritical because then it takes government grants. And there are those who say, well, we should have government grants and so be it. Whatever happens, we're a minority in this country. Truthfully, what we decide to publish and go with is not a monolith thing that we just work off. We treat every circumstance as it warrants. In this particular case, we believed that there was an affront to all 1.1 Muslims in Australia. Million, yeah. And if we being the LMA, the oldest institution, do not take a moral stand regardless of what consequence there may be, then we've we've really sold our soul. Because at the end of the day, what's sacrosanct to all of us is our faith. And that is not questioned. And I'm going to talk about something later, Bill, I think as I said, we need to learn lessons from this. And I'd love to be able to talk about what I believe the lessons are for us. But right now, if you're talking about the media, look, as I said, and I'm not going to lie to you, I am one person that says, I pay taxes, and I pay a hell of a lot of taxes, Mr. Albanese.
He's looking for a tax.
But no, truthfully, and I say that a lot of the young brothers who are very, very well educated and alhamdulillah in very good jobs pay even more tax than I do. Why shouldn't we be able to get grants? Why is there such a taboo, such a shame about it? But the LMA has sold its soul to the grant. No, it hasn't. We take grants. We're not denying it. We have grants. We've built the aged care from a grant. We're building a youth center from the grant. So let's get that out of the way. We do not do media releases based on we have to appease the government because we lose our grants. That is not, and if anything, the last couple of press releases is testimony to that. You know, we've been unequivocal in condemning the acts of the Premier and his denial to admit a wrong. So let's put that to bed. But we're not also going to throw the baby out with the bathwater, because the Ummah does deserve to have aged care centres, youth centres, facilities and services. So if we decide to lay our bed totally on one extreme or the other extreme, they're damned either way. I love the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, and I'm sure the Sheikh will fix it, but I'm paraphrasing because I'm not as good as the Sheikh who can memorize them.
You got the wrong Jimmy talking about the hadith.
No, but I love this hadith because to me, wallahi, this is the essence of everything that I believe in. The Prophet ﷺ said that the deen is not either extreme or relaxed; it's in the middle. And to me, my whole life, and even working in the Jam'iyyah, has always been about how do I maintain a principled middle line. I don't want to be somebody who just says the government's all condemned, they're all a bunch of hypocrites, throw them all away. And I'm not somebody who says, you know, we have to be obedient, colonial, yes men. Somewhere in the middle is the truth, and that's my principled belief, and that's me speaking openly about how I do my media releases. I want the Muslim person to understand that we speak on their behalf when we do the media releases, but we're not aiming it exclusively at them. And I spoke to you about this prior to this. The aim of the press releases, and wallahi, God is my witness, is to try and do da'wah through explaining to the lay person who doesn't know anything about deen how we feel. And it's not going overboard, and it's not going dramatic, and it's not using the language. I know we had this little argument, this lovers tiff. And that's why we didn't use, we didn't use the word Islamophobia, because we didn't want it to be a Muslim person talking to the Muslim community complaining about the non-Muslims. I want the letters. I always believe the letters should be addressing to the lay person in the street who wants to learn more about what we feel and the hurt we feel. And that's the intention behind the media releases. It's more generic. It doesn't preach to the converted. It's trying to preach to the non-converted.
And trying to, I suppose, win
and you
over.
can see by the replies we get, we're not doing very well with the non-converted.
Alhamdulillah. So let me go before we move into, because I want to move into this idea of the Muslim going into Ramadan 2026. You know, every Ramadan is quite special. But this and the last few have been particularly special, subhanAllah. I want to get to that in just a minute. I want to ask, because you said we want to get to some lessons.
Yeah.
I'd like to ask, what are, say, the top 3 lessons that you've taken out of this experience?
Honestly, I can tell you one. It's not even 3 for me. You know, wallahi, the lesson that I've learnt out of this, if we, and I say we, I mean the collective we. There's no exclusion from this we. And I don't care what madhab or sect you want to follow. The Muslim community in Australia, in all its glory, if we do not unite and become one in terms, and we don't have to agree. I mean, we don't have to agree on everything, but surely we agree on La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah, and that should unite us.
Unity, not uniformity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if we don't unite, then don't expect anything to change. Why, surely we've learnt that lesson by now. We had Cronulla riots. We had Gaza. We've had so many incidents in my existence, like the last 20 years, where I keep thinking, the Ummah will wake up eventually and realize, it's been 100 years since our Khalifa fell. What lessons have we learnt from that? We haven't learnt anything. If anything, we keep on dividing more and more and more and more and more to the stage where we're now like, I can't count how many divisions there are anymore.
Subdivided.
Even families are dividing now. Like seriously, the last, God forbid it ever happens again, I think 3 Ramadans ago, families were fighting.
Yeah.
So if we don't unite, and this is what this lesson is, if we don't unite as an ummah, when we're confronted by those who want to seek harm for us or don't seek the best for us, then nothing's going to change. And don't whinge and whine, because you can whinge and whine as much as you want. But if we don't unite on the critical things, I'm talking about the critical things, the things that don't go to Aqidah.
But
I mean, surely that doesn't go to Aqidah, to unite and confront those who want to wish harm to the Muslim community.
Does that mean, Hajj, and again, I ask this with all due respect,
Yes.
and for the record, myself and Hajj Jamel have had some very heated exchanges over the last.
But I love him
last,
still.
Well, and it's because of that I respect the good work that you do, mashallah. Do we have to? Does that unity have to mean that we are all on the same page with these issues, or does it mean, yani, there's a level of nasiha that we sort of have a bit of a back and forth with? How does that translate into practical?
Well, Bill, let's use precedent as the example. In the past, we've had intransigence. No one wants to move from their position. I'm right and you're wrong, and that's it. And if you don't agree with me, I don't want to work with you.
Mm-hmm.
How's that worked for us?
Oh, not very great. I think that's what's created the subdivisions.
Now, and the Sheikh's better to qualify than me to talk about this, but we have four madhahib for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
So if we have four madhahib, and that goes to the most crucial part of our deen, why do we have to agree on everything? We don't have to agree on everything. Even when it comes to politics, even when it comes to whether we want to talk to government or don't want to talk to government. What I'm talking about is this nitpicking on social media where you attack other organizations and masjids and mashayikh and, so-called community leaders, and I laugh about that word, including myself. There's no such thing. We just have to stop attacking each other. They're doing a wonderful job attacking us, and then we say, look, you haven't done enough, let me finish off on them. That's what I'm talking about. That has to stop. We can have differences, but surely, when you're confronted by people who want to harm you, that should unite you. And that's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about, we're not going to agree. Me and you don't agree on a lot of things, but we're respectful about it, and then we just move on. But, I will back you to the tilt if someone comes to want to attack you. So why can't we do that as an ummah collectively? Why can't we say, even if I don't like the way you think about certain perspectives, I'm not going to let anyone else talk about it, especially if they're not Muslim.
Yep.
That's what I'm talking about. And our situation won't change. Look, we're 1.1 million in Australia. 3% of the population. Okay, we could have so much political clout if that 1.1 thought collectively. Imagine, do you think Premier Minz, honestly, this is a question back to you, would say what he said if he knew that 1.1 we're going to scream and shout at him? But he knows, I can take this guy out, I'll silence this one, I'll call them privately, and this one's out of the way. This is a shame on us. This is a blight on us, not a blight on him.
Hajj,
He's working the political angle.
Hajj, are you telling me that we should organise a protest outside of Parliament House?
If honestly, and I know it's in jest, but I'll answer it in sincerity. If all of us were going to protest, wallahi, I'd grab my unborn child and take him there.
So, but your point is, look, let's collectivize efforts. Let's bring in the academics, those who are in leadership, those who are aspiring to some sort of leadership, understand how to use our resources, and then how to strategically.
Bill, that only works. Sorry to stop you there, but you're missing the most important point. We have all that already. What we don't have is this ability to say, I may be wrong, and you may be right, and you may be wrong, and I may be right, but that doesn't matter right now. What matters now is we collectivize our efforts and we form a unified front externally. We don't have the beginning. We have everything else you just mentioned. I know, mashallah, a lot of brothers who are extremely educated, extremely bright. But, if I mention the LMA to them, they nearly faint and fall over and have a heart attack because, they're the evil ones. That is what I'm talking about. That language and that vitriol. And I've heard it. And I've heard it about, Jam'iyya, talking about another Jam'iyya as if there's some God, God forbid, some evil devil. That language has to stop. When we stop that language and we start having a bit of rahmi for each other, then everything else will work itself out.
Inshallah. Look, there is so much that we can that me and Jamal can continue to go on, but I want to bring in Sheikh Jamal into this conversation. Do apologize that you've
it's all good.
And really I want to go into because I really feel like this is the more important part of the conversation, with all due respect.
No, it's true.
We're going into Ramadan, right? We're going into a very unique Ramadan. Ramadan, where again we're coming off the heels of probably the most dramatic protest I can remember since what was deemed, and it wasn't so much a riot, but what was deemed the Sydney riots. Right, we're going into a
Cronulla riots.
no. The last one was the Sydney riots, which was
The Opera House.
the one at no. This was, we're talking almost like 10, 12 years ago or something, where for the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
About the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi
Yes.
Wasallam, and then
No,
there was a march,
sallallahu
a
alaihi wasallam.
unsolicited march that went down George Street and
Mm.
ended up in Hyde Park and whatnot.
That unified us, by the way. No, it did. It unified us because that's the one occasion I can remember where no one actually said, "Hey, I'm not walking next to you because you're of a different sect than me."
Because the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam.
He's sacrosanct.
Sorry,
All right, as much as we all, sorry for Sheikh,
No,
I'm
it's-
emotional about this. As much as we love the Prophet, Allahumma salli wa sallim alayhi, don't we love Islam more? He was the gift that gave us Islam.
Of course.
Taib, all right,
If
how
it
can
was
you
within
make
the
the
back.
comparison.
No, but how do you love? How can you can't have conditional love is what I mean. You can't say I love the Prophet, but I don't really care about what he brought.
It's the kak. Yeah.
I don't say he's more or less. What I mean is, it's not when the Prophet ﷺ talks about unconditional love for him, he's talking about what the message he brought as well, not just him.
Of
Allahumma
course.
salli alayhi. So that's what annoys me. That united us, but then all of a sudden, it was the Prophet, but that united us. Well, what about the message he's saying?
Of course. And again, we can go deeper down this track, but we're limited for time. I really want to get into this discussion. I want to understand how should we view this coming Ramadan, especially the young men who care for their deen and care for the izzah of their deen. Going into, 2 years ago we went into a Ramadan which was depressing, to be quite honest. A year after that we went into another Ramadan which was dramatic. This year, especially for those living in Sydney, Australia, it's drama along with the this fake ceasefire where we're still seeing our brothers and sisters
Silent genocide.
the silent genocide. It's not even all that
How
silent.
silent it is, yeah.
And the West can't ID.
And there's just all this noise, all this stuff happening, and we're trying to go into what should be a tranquil time of the year. How should we understand this Ramadan?
Yeah.
That's the hardest question.
Yeah, it's a tricky question, and I don't think there's necessarily a scenario where you have this perfectly smooth Ramadan. I mean, for me personally, Ramadan, although I idealize it as being a time where I can just sort of step back and retreat and focus on myself, the fact of the matter is that I have to there's a lot more demand on me as a
Just as a sheikh, of course.
someone approached by not just in my space or capacity as a sheikh, but also in terms of family, and there's so much commitment either way, and so the amount of time available just to withdraw and focus on myself is very limited, and that's generally my experience with Ramadan. But coming to this Ramadan, I mean, of course, yes, a lot is going to be on our minds, on our news feeds, and so on. The headlines will probably not stop, with the ongoing focus and demonization of the Muslim community. I think it's really important, nonetheless, to bring that focus back to our ibadah. At the end of the day, Ramadan is a very limited time, and if scholars of the past would discontinue many of their lessons, whether it be even if it's lessons or classes on sacred knowledge, for the sake of devoting themselves to our ibadah, then really we should be there should be a focus on our ibadah at the expense of other things. Our ibadah should be put ahead, like that individual devotion should be put ahead of other things. But that being said, it's not to say that we divorce ourselves and shut ourselves out from the plight and the very real plight that is endured by our brothers and sisters overseas. At the end of the day, it's very important to connect with and have nusrah for our brothers and sisters overseas who do not have that privilege of enjoying and making the most of Ramadan in peace. So keeping the cause alive in our hearts and minds. Yes, you spend some time doing your Quran, revising the Quran, connecting with the Book of Allah Subhanahu wa Taala. But at the same time, if you're going for your Taraweeh and your Tahajjud, there's many opportunities for dua. You have the dua of Qunut al-Witr, and many other opportunities for dua. Don't just make dua for yourself. Don't just make dua for your family. Think about all the Hind Rajabs out there. Think about all the Salah Jafrawis and so on and so forth. That should be at the forefront. We must not get too self-absorbed. Like Ramadan should not be used as an excuse to simply disconnect from the ummah. There needs to be, on one hand, yes, a focus on ta'abbud and ibadah, a greater focus on that, on your individual worship. But in terms of your spiritual connection, in terms of your vision and focus, there should be simultaneously greater connection, greater empathy for your brothers and sisters overseas. Yeah,
Absolutely. And so how?
and
So
I'll probably just skipped over the Sydney part, but yeah, I think it comes even before what we've enjoyed here in Sydney.
no, I think what you were talking about there goes to the core of every single Muslim. Like we shouldn't divorce the idea of, yani, even our salah. In your salah, you're allowed to make dua. Of course, yani, there's fiqh opinions, and one should go and clarify these with their mashayikh and whatnot. But in your salah, while you're in sujud, at least in your sunan, you can make a dua which isn't necessarily from the Quran. Am I mistaken on this?
Yeah. So, yani, some scholars, yani, some of them restrict, dua on worldly matters, but like when it comes to, matters of the akhirah, there's essentially like agreement.
Yani, as simple as
End of
Allah,
your prayer.
you
Do
know,
dua
Yeah, at the end of the prayer, outside of once you've done your salam, that's
wherever it might be.
yeah.
The point is that in all of these actions that we do, in our own lives, we should center in our lives the plight of the Muslim ummah as much as we can, right? Of course, you start with those concentric circles. You make some dua for yourself and your family. You make some dua for those who are around you, and then you remember the plight of the ummah when you're reciting your Quran. Allah Subhanahu wa Taala will talk about situations. Allah take the Quran as a conversation, right, from Allah Subhanahu wa Taala to you. And there's times where He Subhanahu wa Taala is talking about things that affect us as a community, as a collective. Draw lessons from that is effectively
so
what.
don't just finish on your don't just focus on your khatma, like don't just, it's not just
I need to get through the pages.
getting through the whole khatma by the end of Ramadan. There should be an engagement. More important than just the quantity is the engagement with the verses of the Quran. And if you don't have Arabic as your language, or if most of it, like maybe 99% of audience will not be able to appreciate Quran or connect with it on that deep level, at the very least, spend some time reflecting on the translation or on an explanation of verses, which will sort of enable you to just have those reflections, inshallah.
In the modern world, in many ways, Ramadan has sort of become a very individualistic thing, right? In that we're told to just focus on these sorts of actions, and it doesn't seem like there's much that we do that's collective action, communal action. Would you disagree with that? Because my understanding, I'm getting to the question. Really, the core of the question is how did the Sahaba and our pious predecessors before treat Ramadan itself when it came to collective and ummatic efforts?
Well, I mean, the fact of the matter is that Ramadan is supposed to, bring people together. Yes, to some extent, you are focusing on your individual worship, but at the end of the day, and literally at the end of the day, when the sun sets,
Mhm.
you are breaking your fast alongside your fellow brothers and sisters. At the same time, uh, one moment all of you or everyone is fasting, and then the next moment they're all breaking their fast together. So that is supposed to unite hearts, just as our hearts are united through congregational prayer. Islam is inherently a collectivistic religion, a religion that unites people together. It's experienced as an ummah, as a nation. We have a concept of ummah. It's not just an ideal. It's a spiritual and global brotherhood that we experience, whether it be in our fasting, whether it be is through zakah, redistributing wealth in the society, uh, congregational salah, all through Hajj, where that's probably the most visible manifestation on the plains of Arafah. So that idea of bonding is inherent even in our fasting and breaking of fast. And uh, y- I think that's reflected even in Taraweeh as well. As we gather for Taraweeh. So there is this idea of bonding, and at the time of the Sahaba, they were very much engaged. It wasn't that they were isolated in corners the whole day, but rather they experienced Ramadan together and collectively with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Of course, and i'tikaf was a separate issue. Just to be
Of
clear.
course,
Yeah.
of course. But in yani, in some ways, yani,
Yeah.
even
But isn't it funny? Because we just, I don't know if you meant it, but it sort of segued into what we were speaking about previously. They had their hearts combined. Their prayer wasn't just a physical act to them. It was the idea of praying in a congregation was unified hearts and united hearts. And that's what we're lacking. The West has taught us a lot of bad habits, unfortunately. And one of the worst habits it's taught us is to be a selfish, isolated individual and think about nafsi first. And that's just me speaking out loud. Correct me if I'm wrong. I just feel like that's sort of transpired into our religious beliefs as well now, where everything is a individualistic act. I mean, you don't have to go far. Look at the mosques; it's always empty. We can barely fill half a mosque, which is sad.
Outside of Ramadan.
I'm talking about. I'm talking about outside of Ramadan because that's when all of a sudden we become, and see, it's sort of again it segues. It takes an act like what happened in Sydney to become a Ramadan for us. All of a sudden we're all angry. We all want to unify, and then as soon as the incident goes away, we'll be individual. We're preoccupied with our lives, and everyone's going on about their own business. And it sort of segues a lot into how we are as in our individuals with our deen. And we're sort of very selective when we want to be communal, but the majority of the time we want to be very individualistic, very capitalistic.
Haj, you know what, that actually segues, and I was going to go to these questions um, a little bit later, but I think it's a good segment or a good point to sort of bring these two discussions together. There's a brother online asking a question. It's a very straightforward question, and I respect him for it.
That's fine. That's what we're here for.
Gabriel Isaac. LMA shouldn't play the victim. Genuinely speaking, I'll take him for his word here.
Yeah.
There were many initiatives, but the LMA made it clear that what their direction was. It decided to fray away from the community. And again, I think this is quite a fair question.
Yeah.
Where was the LMA representation in the Herzog protest? So,
All right. So let's start with that. Let's start from the first. I'm not here to be accountable for the sins of those who went before me. I'm not even 60 years old. The Jam'i is 60 years old. So I can't answer, and I don't want to answer. Everyone's going to face their Rabb one day, and he's going to hold us all to an account.
Haj, how long have you been involved with?
5 years, 6 years.
And in that time, there's been a lot of sort of changes inside the LMA.
Yeah, and not only changes. I mean, we've been. I would challenge that there is another organisation as transparent as the LMA in terms of everything. Our finances are the only finances that are open to its members. They don't even have to make an appointment. They just knock on the door and enter, and they ask for the accounts. That's constitutionally they're allowed to. But that's not the topic. The topic I think the brother's trying to get to is that I can't answer the questions what happened prior to me. And it's not my objective to answer them. I didn't join so I could become a spokesperson for the ones who went before me. I joined because I believed in something that is greater than just the LMA. and I can do my little bit in terms of creating an organization that we're all proud of. That was my aim. Why we didn't go to the Herzog protest? Is he talking about the Monday
The
protest?
Monday protest, yeah.
Well, you can answer that. We were all in Adelaide for a religious cause.
Yep.
Not that we're holidaying, getting a suntan. You know, the point is, you can't tell the institution when you say the LMA wasn't there. What do they want us to have a banner saying we are here, LMA? I mean, this is what I'm talking about. You know, there's expectations there's community expectations that are just unrealistic of any organization. It's unfair. And I'm not defending the LMA. I'm not crying. And the other thing, I'm not crying on behalf of the LMA. I'm proud of the LMA because the last 6 years, mashallah, it has done a whole turn. But we're not there. We're nowhere near where we want to be.
It's a journey.
Yeah.
It's a journey that's...
Everyone here can testify to the fact that, you know, the 6 years that have now passed are way better than the last 20 that we had to suffer through.
Yeah.
And I mean that sincerely, but we're not crying wolf. I mean, we're building institutions. We've built an aged care center, the first one, other than the Turkish brothers, but the first Arabic-speaking aged care center. That's not crying wolf. You know, we're in the process of building a youth center. We're acquiring a mosque in Melbourne and Adelaide. I mean, that's not someone who's saying, look, woe is me. What we're saying is, it's not about the LMA. Why does everyone have to bring it back to an organization? I'm talking on behalf of an ummah. I don't care what you belong to, what you think about me personally, whatever you think, keep it to yourself because that's nasiha. Keep it to yourself. And if you have an issue, Habibi, direct message me, come to the LMA, call me. I'm happy to take advice. But it's that collective condemnation that's done on social media, which is harming our ummah. It doesn't do any good for our ummah. But the LMA doesn't go to rallies as a, you know, I don't gather the staff here and say, Allah, let's all go in a bus. The LMA is a not-for-profit organization. You know, we're not a government. We're not AOP. We're not.
Would you ever have an issue with one of your staff members or board members attending those protests?
I've been to about 3 or 4 of them myself. I've been to about 3 or 4.
Me too.
There you go. How many have you been to? Have you been ever questioned? No. Has anyone ever asked you, "Hey,
yeah,
what are
of
you doing
course.
there?"
No, of course I haven't, and I've been quite active and vocal in the community
But
myself.
what I'm trying to get at is the stereotype that people build of the LMA is that we are in the government's pocket and we don't want to do anything that upsets our master. And it's disgraceful. It's hurt. It actually is hurtful. I mean, anyone that has that sort of thinking, knock on the door. Come and see what this place does. You know, there is not another organization that helps the people that can't even be buried. I mean, why don't people want to face the reality that this place does a lot of good? Yeah, it's not perfect, but I've been always advocating, don't destroy the organizations, make them better. It's easy to destroy. I can get a sledgehammer and start knocking down the place, but who's going to rebuild it?
Yep. And Sheikh, just a final question before we have to end for Isha. So I just received a a good friend of mine private messaged me, questioned, and then asked me to stop being a spinner. So
okay. Good.
That I can't do, unfortunately.
Yeah, I testify to that.
Actually, I think most people here would think I'm quite the straight baller at the current moment. Sheikh, just a final question to you then. I'm going to bring in, what we were just talking about. If someone chooses to attend these protests throughout Ramadan, should they? How should they? What's the conduct that they should sort of carry themselves with?
Yeah, so first of all, it's important to centralize the Quran, connection with the Quran during this month. So if we're talking about scholars essentially discontinuing or suspending their classes, just general ilmi classes during Ramadan, just to focus on the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then surely anything lesser should also not be given, at the very least, not be given such focus. Of course, the fact of the matter is, in our day-to-day lives in Ramadan, we are going to be attending work, we're going to be attending to family and so on. Um, I think where possible, if I'm going to talk about myself, I would refrain from attending any protests during Ramadan unless there was some sort of like very essential message that needed to be made, or it's like a one-time opportunity that there was a very like pressing need that couldn't be missed. Whereas if it's just the if we're just talking about calling out the government's position and their silence towards the genocide or complicity and so on, I think that can sort of wait until maybe after Ramadan. During Ramadan, there's other ways of supporting your brothers and sisters. Let it be through the dua, let it be through your donations and so on and so forth. Again, you want to bring the focus on your ibadah. You don't want time, the precious hours of this month being sort of spent on other causes. Just keep that focus.
So
This month, inshallah.
if I can sort of summarize what you're saying there, it's not a matter of forgetting or,
That's right.
or putting this to the
Protests
side.
are just a means. It's a means to an end. Yes, we support just causes, and we believe our cause here is the most just of causes. And when we're talking about like defending our brothers and sisters in Gaza,
But okay, can I give you my sort of personal
Sure.
stance on this? And the adhan is going off in the back, so we'll have to wrap it up. My personal position is on those situations where, like, if the Isaac Herzog one was happening inside of Ramadan, I'd say like
see, that's an example of
do
what
you
I had in
can.
mind.
Yeah,
Yeah,
do what you can to be there. If the Harbour Bridge one was happening during Ramadan, even some of the maybe just to keep some of the momentum going, you know, choose one throughout the month almost, right?
yeah. That's the idea already.
Yeah, without necessarily taking too much away from your other ibadat and your
Yeah.
other focus.
Assuming that's what people are actually doing, because I mean, the fact of the matter is a lot of people, okay, they might have some enthusiasm in the first few months, in the first few days of the month, but then that tapers off, and they're just back to this routine of wake up, go to work, and then they'll maybe have a nap before iftar, and then if iftar comes, they dine with their families, and then hopefully they're off to tarawih, but then just spending the night hanging out. Like if that's what your day-to-day life during Ramadan it looks like, you need to really seriously fix that up and block out hours of your day for dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, for Quran. Otherwise, you're really squandering a very precious opportunity. The Quran, Ramadan is not to be taken for granted. And if you've experienced 20 or 30 Ramadans previously, this may well be the last, if Allah allows you to witness in the first place. So there's a beautiful quote. I believe it was by Ibn Jawzi rahimahullah, where he says that if there's one thing that the deceased wish for, in their graves, it is to witness just one more Ramadan, or maybe it was one day of Ramadan that he mentioned. So yes, you may have experienced many in the past, and you feel like maybe this Ramadan is just a repeat of all those previous Ramadans. But you need to cherish and prize this opportunity as when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives it to you.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Jazakumullah khair again to both of you for joining me today, for what is a in many ways very complicated way of just trying to merge everything that's kind of happening at the same time to talk about important issues. However, at the same time, things that are going to affect us as Muslims specifically.
Yeah, and I think we should take that moment to acknowledge and appreciate that it's not easy. Like that we need to acknowledge that there's a lot going on, and I think every one of us is trying to put the pieces together and find a good balance, inshallah.
Absolutely. So Jazakumullah khair for everybody for joining us here today. Again, continue the conversation in the chat. Excuse me. Continue the conversation in the chat. Feel free to send us your questions on any further episodes that we do hold. Inshallah, we're looking at holding a few for Ramadan, and going a little bit more deeper into some of the fiqh questions that people have and these sorts of things. And it was done in a bit of jest to, say that one of my friends did actually reach out to me to ask me to stop being a spinner. That's just to say that I try to take on as many of the questions that do come my way and try to share them with the brothers. So, your voice, we're trying to hear your voices. At the LMA, this is one thing that, I can say that I've got a bit of a history here, a good positive and sometimes bit of a tension sort of history, but the point is that we're trying to listen, we're trying to take on your questions, we're trying to take on your criticisms, and provide a platform where we can respond to those, or just hear you out and give you the perspective from this side. So with that said, Jazakumullah khair again for joining us, and Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
All right.